I think it's our duty now to say, okay, what is disbanding? How exactly? Because now the way I see it, we're sitting on an opportunity now. And we're sitting on an opportunity to really say, okay, this is what this is going to mean. This isn't just going to mean you're just going to disband this police and then you're going to replace it with another, systemically rot system where the same problem is eventually going to happen. It's not going to happen for a little while because, people are really paying attention, but we're not really going to do anything to address the system here. Mm-hmm. So the same thing will inevitably happen. This is an opportunity to say, okay, we're done. We are completely, we're done with this. We're disbanding it. We're defunding it. We're demilitarizing it. And we're starting again. And here's what that means. So what are your guys' take? Like, what are some true systemic solutions for this thing?
Well, one thing would be is, you don't need armed officers for every situation. You know what I mean? I mean, like, you don't need a guy with a gun to come to your house because, of a noise complaint or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like every situation in our country, you're encouraged to call armed people to come to your house or to come to you, and that's completely unnecessary. Like I've seen a lot of cops even say that, they'll go their whole careers without ever even really using their gun. So if that's the case, then they don't need them, So we can have, maybe we can have like an organization, a community-based organization of, unarmed people who can, help with these situations where, it's not necessary. And then most of these police forces around the world, they don't bring in armed forces unless it's absolutely necessary.
Why do you need a gun because someone's having a house party?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Yeah. Like, there's worse things in the world than loud music,
The only thing that could happen is a drunken mistake. That's the only thing that can happen in that situation. Someone's just like, yeah, we're having a good time, bang, bang. And it's like, oh, that's going to come down. That's not, that wasn't good that you just did that. That wasn't cool at all. Just like, why does a town of 9,000 need a tank?
Also, I think domestic violence is a big thing and I want to speak like making sure I don't I'm not an expert, and I don't want to pretend I am. But one area I do know about is domestic violence because I was a domestic violence worker for a long time. And oftentimes I think, and people get very scared because I see, and I think it's genuine because it's hard to get in, like we're all so socialized that we need law enforcement. So I understand getting a new idea is hard. And one of the big things people say is, what about domestic violence victims? And I understand the compassion people have when they bring up that concern. But just for myself, as someone who worked in domestic violence for a long time, I will tell you that the police are not useful at all. And in fact, they make it worse. And there's a huge enmity almost between there is between domestic violence workers and police in a lot of places, because oftentimes, they do see us as enemies, and police, I don't work there anymore, but I did for a long time. And police oftentimes hate domestic violence workers because the number one profession for abusers is police. So they're not really there to help us. They feel like we're hurting their friends, and they always feel like, oh, she lied. That's my coworker. He would never do that. So it's really dangerous to help. If you have a domestic violence victim in your program, whose partner is or abuser is a police officer, everyone's on red alert. Every worker, every client, every volunteer, everyone's life is in danger, and we know that. So I feel like I understand the compassion people have when they bring up that concern, but in real life, it hasn't helped. And the other thing with domestic violence calls is, there's a lot of police officers, they have to arrest if anyone's injured. So so a lot of times when a victim is being assaulted, they use reactive force. So they get to the home and the victim isn't bleeding, because you don't always bleed from being assaulted. But maybe they scratch their abuser and the abuser's bleeding like here. A scratch is not an offensive wound, it's a defensive wound, and but because whoever the abuser is injured, the victim gets arrested. So a lot of in domestic violence calls, police almost always arrest both parties or sometimes just the victim. So it's really not helping in that situation. A lot of police officers have something like domestic response teams, volunteers who are social workers who go out with them. And they do better work than the police officers do. So I feel like it's unfortunate that they're volunteers. They should get paid for their work. But I feel that, and even in saying that, I think there's a lot of racial injustice in the social work world that we have to also look at. I'm not trying to put social services on a, I'm not saying we're innocent, because I think there's a lot of problems in our world too. But police are really not helpful in situations of domestic violence. So if that could give people some peace in being worried about that, it actually will make it better.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and